Alright, in this video I'm going to bring you through setting up your new game. I'm going to go over the different difficulty options, and I'm actually going to start the new game for my new playthrough that's I'm going to start releasing next week. Alright, first difficulty slider you have, probably the biggest one of the entire game, how many parts you need for mech assembly. So if you set this to 3, then you're going to be able to build a lot of mechs throughout your playthrough. It's going to be much easier to come by the parts that you need to build whatever mechs you're going for. And if you're a real masochist, you set it to 8, at which point you have to come across the same mech several times before you can actually build it. Even if you spend all of your salvage grabbing parts, it'll take you a while. I generally play with this around 4. I find it gives a good balance between having to be careful not to just utterly destroy a mech, but at the same time it's really hard to get a full mech out of a single mission. The company type, this determines both your starting roster, your which mechs are randomly generated and what type of mechs you get, and it also determines your starting location. So for those reasons, the, in my opinion, most challenging starts are clans and primitive clan, because those start you in clan space where all the missions are objectively just harder. Primitive mechs and primitive tanks, as well as VTOL and tanks starts, are also challenging for the simple reason that you just don't start with as good of quality units as you otherwise would. And then the final difficulty, or the final difficult start in my opinion, is Tortuga, which starts you with pirate mechs, and pirate mechs have quirky little weapons and equipment that have a tendency to explode on you. So those tend to be the most challenging starts. I believe Battle Armor Platoon would also be challenging, but I haven't tried that one, so I can't say from experience. If you're going for a very safe start, any of the big houses, Davian, Steiner, Kirita, Liao, those are going to be your default starts. Your hey, this is normal, everything you start with is viable to some degree or another. And if you start with the mercenary start, it's just completely randomized what mechs you start with. Each of the houses, I believe, has one main mech that you're guaranteed to start with some variant of, but it's been a while since I played on anything other than mercenary. Friendly fire is a difficulty slider that helps you decide how tactical you want to have to be. None means that there is no friendly fire, and so if you're shooting past your mechs, nothing bad's going to happen. And all means if you're shooting past your mechs, you might hit your own mech in the rear, and if it's a light mech getting hit by a PPC or something, you might do some serious damage. I do not know what neutrals does. I have never done neutrals. I wonder if it has no stray shots neutrals. Yeah, I don't know what neutrals only means. But I always play with all just because it adds to the strategic depth. Mech recovery chance is another difficulty slider. One thing to keep in mind is ejecting has a 50% higher recovery chance, so if you keep it at the default 50%, that means if there's a mech destroyed, you have a 50-50 chance of it being unrecoverable, in which case it'll appear as part of the loot and you will not be able to repair and refit it to bring it back again. 50% higher for eject, so with a 50% here, you have a guarantee of if you eject in time, you will recover the mech. Ejecting does destroy all the head components, so that's something to keep in mind. If you want the game to be easier, just set it to 100 and you will never lose a mech. No matter how badly you play, no matter how badly the mission goes, you will always keep all of your mechs all the time. And again, the masochism setting is 0, so if you lose a mech, it is guaranteed to be gone. If you eject, you have a 50-50 chance of losing it. I'm going to just leave that at 50. Contract difficulty variance, which is a little bit misleading sometimes. Some people seem to get confused by it. This is not how difficult an individual mission is going to be. This is going to be how many half-skull variations there are from the difficulty of that planet or your lance rating, depending on what you set when you were setting the RogueTech launcher. So if you have it set to planet rating like I do, then a 3-skull planet with a 2 difficulty variance would be anywhere between a 2-skull and a 4-skull mission. The higher the variation, the more likely there is to be a mission you want to do on any given planet, but the less missions there will be of your chosen difficulty per planet. So if you want to keep a varied lance like I like doing, then a higher contract difficulty variance will allow you to drop a variety of different lance weights on a single planet. If you have a 0 variance, that means that every single mission generated on a given planet is going to be that planet ratings. Or if you're playing with difficulty based on your company rating, then this means you will have no choice but to play whatever the computer thinks your current company strength is. Again, I really like keeping it a high variance just because it gives me more options, and I really like having options when it comes to dropping missions. Contract payment and salvage are, again, difficulty sliders that allow you to make either the payout or the salvage higher or lower. I do a little bit of weird here. I go with generous for contract payment, and I go with normal for salvage, so that there's more of a consideration when I'm going into a mission. The higher C-bill payout means that sometimes I would prefer to go with the C-bill payout rather than a high salvage. Now, another variation of this would be to go stingy salvage, normal payment, which would still give you the same interesting choice of, do I go for more money or do I go for more salvage? If you go normal, then honestly the most effective method of making money is to salvage things that are valuable and then sell them or scrap them. But we'll get to those settings in just a second. Or I guess I can just do it now. I'll just skip down here to the bottom. So if you set those settings to further differentiate, if you don't want to change it to generous payments or stingy salvage, the other way you can alleviate the issue of just max salvage all the time is best is to go to the scrap return values and shop selling prices settings. Now, the lower these are, the less money you can get from obviously selling things and scrapping mech parts or mechs. I generally don't mess with these too much. It really does change the difficulty a lot and change the way you have to play. If you set these both to their minimum, then you're going to have to take nothing but C-bills on some missions in order to meet the requirements to keep your company afloat. I do think that this is one of those difficulty sliders for people who enjoy the tactical aspect, but they don't enjoy, say, the month-to-month upkeep and worrying about things like that. You can adjust those as well as the contract payment and salvage to your liking for your particular playstyle. I am going to... You know what? I think for my playthrough, I'm going to keep these normal, but I'm going to just tank. So go 7% on scrap and 9% on sell. So now just salvaging all the time is going to be less viable to keep myself afloat than if I were to mess with these. Because again, with everything as default, just salvaging everything all the time tends to be better. Just because you can sell things that you don't want and scrap things that you don't want and still manage to make the ends meet at the end of the month for the financial report. Okay, moving on from those, we have commander experience points, which is how many experience points your commander starts with. obvious, very, very simple. The higher you start, the better your starting commander. The lower you start, the worse your starting commander. So that's one difficulty slider. Having 10,000 experience for your commander really helps the early game missions because it allows you to build your commander so he's actually able to hit stuff, or he or she is actually able to hit, because the early game struggle is really just landing shots. And the more experience you have, the higher your gunnery and tactics can be, the more likely you are to land shots. The Advanced Mech Warriors option refers to the chance of mech warriors with higher than normal skills being available later in the game. So if you want just rookie pilots all throughout your playthrough, you set that to rare. If you want the chance of maybe swapping out a mech warrior for a more experienced mech warrior or for a different mech warrior, then you can have Advanced Mech Warriors as often. I personally like the challenge of if my mech warrior dies, I have to train a new rookie, so I always set that to rare. The Ronin Higher chance. This is the chance for a mech warrior in a system to be what's called a Ronin, which is developer-specific unique characters, Kickstarter backer unique characters, and modder unique characters. So these characters, you cannot change the portrait, you cannot change the name. They are whoever they are with the quirks they have, and they are unique. Now, it is possible to come across the same Ronin in the same playthrough, but I've found that if you hire the same Ronin and you have two of them in your roster, for some reason the way the game's coded, if you do a mission with one of them, there's a chance that the other one will get fatigued, or that one will get fatigued, and it's weird. I've actually run a mission with one and they both were fatigued. Or another time I ran a mission and I waited long enough for the Ronin that was going to be going on the next mission to no longer be fatigued. I dropped into the mission and it had actually swapped out for whatever reason and put the fatigued one in instead of the one that was not fatigued. So generally, it just keeps things simpler to not hire the same Ronin twice. And if you want to rename and change the pictures of every pilot, you just set that to never. Ronins do generally have slightly better skills, or more quirks, I should say, not necessarily better, more quirks than your average random pilot. So it does technically make it a little easier if you drop it to 100%, but I'm going to just drop it down to 30 so that they're still there, but they're not quite as prevalent as the default settings. Actually, I'll drop it even more. I think I'm going to drop it to 20. Pilots per system. This just means how many are sitting around the hiring hall on each planet waiting for you to hire them. I like to drop that to 10, or raise that to 10, just so I have more variety in who I choose. So I generally raise that up to 10. It does make it a little bit easier in the sense that you're never really strapped for, oh, I have to replace this mech warrior and this is just the best available right now. It allows for more customization as far as your roster goes. These three, mech warrior progression, exponent, and multiplier, determine how quickly your mech warriors level up, how quickly they go from being rookies to being maxed out 10-10, 10-10. So this isn't so much a difficulty slider in my experience as it is how long do you want the game to go? How long do you want it to be before you're comfortable in late game? I personally like to drop the progression to slow and the multiplier to slow, but leave the exponent alone. So that makes it so that it's a little bit more of a drawn-out playthrough. Your mech warriors don't get to 10 very quickly, if at all, before you're done with whatever the goal of that playthrough is. But it definitely, you can still level your mech warriors, just not as quickly as if it's all set to default, or if you set it to fast, you'll get to maxed out mech warriors very, very quickly. Again, between the advanced mech warriors being rare and the slow progression, it makes it really hurt when you lose somebody. Which brings us to the next difficulty option, lethality. So if your pilot, or if your mech is headshot, there is a chance that your mech warrior is going to die. And I personally like bumping up to lethal, just so that I have to be really more careful about letting mechs get obliterated instead of ejecting. I like making ejecting a healthy part of the game. So I put that to lethal, but if you are new to RogueTech, it would not be shameful to set it to never, just so you don't lose your advanced mech warriors because you made a tactical decision that maybe wasn't the most sound. If you're new to RogueTech, you're probably going to lose mechs pretty often, at least early on, whenever you're getting your feet wet and you're trying to learn. Having this set to never keeps you from having to constantly get new pilots, new mech warriors, and just constantly go through the training. So that again is more about how you want to play your roster more so than actual difficulty. But if you are new to RogueTech at all, setting that to never won't hurt. As far as starting money goes, easier is more, harder is less. I actually like to start a little bit higher than normal. Not so much because, oh, I want to buy all the things, but more so because I like to travel around a little bit for my particular playthrough to set up where I want to set up before I start really getting into the game. Mech bay speed, mech bay armor speed, mech bay C-bills. These determine how hard or easy the out-of-combat gameplay is. So if you like to try to minimize damage and you like to be penalized if your mechs take a lot of damage, you can set these to very hard and expensive. In which case, the more damage you take as you play, the missions have a lot more penalties if you mess up. I would not recommend these for new players. I like to keep them at normal, but if you're new to RogueTech, especially if you're not too well versed in like simulation type games and economic management type games, you might want to bump these down to fast or cheap. But for anyone who's played RogueTech, they know that having fast and easy is going to make the game a lot less of a challenge. There's going to be a lot less situations where your company is facing bankruptcy because you took a mission you shouldn't have. So I like to keep them at normal. That's about it for the options when you're starting a new game. Now then, after you set these options, you click Start Game, and you're going to have to wait a minute. Alright, so after you finish the loading time after setting your game options, you are presented with your commander options. I'm going to leave this over here as a teaser for anyone who's interested in following my Let's Play starting next weekend. But you choose where you were born, which determines your starting stats. And each different setting, each different origin gives you different starting stats. The Trueborn origin is the strongest, in which it gives all +1 to all skills as compared to just +1 to 2 skills or +2 to a single skill. I'm going to be playing that for obvious reasons. The interest, your interests have always been, is literally just a decision that gives you 2 quirks. So again, for those quirks, you can see here the upkeep cost does not matter for your commander. Your commander is always going to have a 0 upkeep, but I have them here sorted by interest, and then I can also sort them by career. So this is the list of different options you have. But the different benefits, if you have 2 that give you the same, for example, Gambler and Veteran, you only get it once. So you do not get lucky twice. You could just get the +2 clustering and -10% jam chance. It doesn't stack. You just lose out on a quirk if you choose overlap, like Space and Gladiator, Loner and Soldier, or Gambler and Veteran. So keep that in mind. Your third choice, in addition to giving you 2 more quirks, as you saw on the spreadsheet, Also gives you an additional starting perk that you get on day 1. So you have to pass 1 day once you start, and you get a loot cache that has whatever your starting bonus is, whether it be the Bushwhacker, the Hunchback, specialist items, an advanced unit that can include a clan mech, 3 million starting money, a random hatchet man, a random pirate mech, a vehicle, or a large assortment of ammo and weapons. So I will leave this here, and next video I will be starting my playthrough. Until then.